Most people think the streets are a playground, a fast way to cash, respect, or fame. But you want to know the truth? The streets are a countdown. You either get locked up, or you end up dead, or survive by learning how to walk through fire just without getting burned. And today, we're breaking down a few of the harshest recent cases I've seen, and we're going to connect the dots and show you what it really means to live and survive in this world. So, welcome to Fed by Fire. I'm Christian Whitlow. Where we don't fold, we forge. And I'm using this platform to talk to the broken ones, the ones out there trapped in addiction, trauma, manipulation, and I've lived through a lot of that and seen what's really behind the headlines. And today, we're diving deep into some federal cases, from ICE traffickers in Indianapolis to pill presses in Boston and allegedly violent gang members in Connecticut. But I'm not just reading the press releases. I'm explaining what these stories mean for the people involved who live the reality every day, and how it all ties back to survival and lessons I've learned the hard way. So maybe you don't have to. So let me walk you through what happened to Caesar Alexander Pinda Penaloza, 21 years old, from California, just a kid. Really, between January 2023 and November 2024, he became a courier. That means he wasn't a boss, or he wasn't really the plug. He was just the body, the mule, the one who gets it there, who gets handed the plane ticket and the promise, because the people above him already decided what his life was worth. And I promise you, it wasn't much. His job was very simple: to fly from the West Coast to the Midwest, pick up or drop off, then fly back with the product or money over and over. The same pattern every time. One-way flights, light luggage, commercial airlines. That's how some crews move product when they don't want to risk the highways, or when they want someone disposable to take the fall, and that's so sad. But on November 9th, 2024, he lands in Indianapolis, another one-way ticket, another routine run, something he was used to, but this time the feds were already waiting. He was being surveilled. They watched him walk off the plane and walk down to baggage and claim his suitcases like it was nothing. But, he was probably used to it. And the moment he touched those bags, the moment he put his hand on them, his life basically stopped right there. He hit pause right there. Inside those bags were 19 keys of pure ice. That's 45 pounds. That kind of weight will drown an entire city. The DEA, Homeland Security, investigators in Indiana State Police, Plainfield PD, all of them linked up, like they were waiting him to clock in for work. And when they pulled him aside and cracked open those bags, it was over. No movie chase, no shootout, no finesse, just a young man who was swallowed alive by a machine he didn't fully understand. But he ended up getting sentenced to 10 years and 10 months in federal prison, followed by 4 years of supervised release. And that's his whole 20s gone. That's the cost of being the one holding the bag in a world where nobody is gonna hold yours. And I want to say this part clearly, because I've been around guys like him at one point, and I'm lucky I wasn't caught in a situation way worse. Mentally, I was him too. When you're deep in addiction or deep in the street ecosystem, you don't think of the consequences. You're just thinking about the money or the escape. The chaos for me, the substances were different. I was lost in all of it. Whatever it took me out of my own skin. And for a minute, every time you're in that world, somebody sees your desperation and opportunity. Somebody sees your hunger as a weakness. Somebody sees your big heart as leverage. And before you know it, you're doing things you swore you never would, just to stay afloat. And, I remember being manipulated, controlled, gaslit, used, thinking all part of growing up. I was making choices for myself when I was really just surviving inside someone else's agenda. And that's how you end up. That's, how you end up almost dying. That's how you end up in jail. That's how you end up, getting written off by these people who swore they would fight for you. And, that's how you end up being rejected by the people who swore they'd be down for you when this day came. That kind of pain makes you reckless in ways you don't even see till much later. And that's what I see in this case. A kid who probably thought he was finally given a shot. A kid who didn't have the life experience to understand that nobody flying you around the country with ice in a suitcase has your best interests at heart. A kid who thought he was in control of his life while somebody else was pushing the buttons and pulling the levers. Let's talk about case number 2. You got Sean Maurice Green, 41, out of Newport News. That's close to me, Virginia Beach. Goes by Nitty. Then you got Quincy Lawrence Freeman, 49, of Brooklyn. He was living in Virginia Beach. Goes by Diddy or Q. These guys were connected, but not in some glamorous cartel way. More like two men locked in a cycle of surviving, supplying, and trying to stay one step ahead of a system that watches every single move. And I've been there. According to the feds, Green was out there. They were doing controlled buys with law enforcement in March and April of 2024, over 51 grams of H and Fetty mixed. That right there is, enough to do a lot of harm. It doesn't give second chances, that kind of substance. But, when you're turning every bag into a coin toss on someone's life, that's just a part of that lifestyle. Then you got Freeman. Back in July 2023, he delivered $130,000 in proceeds at a gas station to a confidential source. Gas stations are dangerous places, man. Cameras everywhere, people everywhere. And when you're dealing with dirty money, all it takes is one wrong face or conversation recorded, and your whole operation is cracked. Boom, one fly in the ointment. That's all it takes that you can't account for. So let's fast forward to October 16, 2024. Green drives out to Freeman's apartment in Virginia Beach and picks up 149 grams of H or Fetty mix. That's, not user weight, not mid-level deal. That's distribution level. Green takes off back towards Newport News, probably thinking it's just another run he's done 100 times. But this time is different. He gets pulled over for something, stupid, expired registration. And that's how it broke up in the whole case. And that's how it happens for most of us, most of the time. Not a raid, not a shootout, not a high-speed chase, just a simple traffic infraction that turns into a life sentence. I'll pray for him and his family. A narcotics drug dog hits the car, officer search it, and boom, the Fetty and H are stuffed under the driver's seat. They arrest him and search him and find just $800 on him, and it's over. The next day, October 17th, investigators hit Freeman's apartment. Before they can even get inside, Freeman is literally trying to flush all of his stash down the toilet. Red-handed, old school panic move. But, you can't flush a whole operation, you can't flush conspiracy. So, they start searching the spot and they find the truth of what was really happening. 180 grams of H, MDMA, and Fetty mix. He tried to flush 1,810 grams. That's almost 4 pounds of blow. 989 grams of H. Xylazine, that trank, bud, 2 firearms, a kilo press, an electronic money counter, and over $13,000 in cash. Boy, that was a home run for them. This wasn't a usual side hustle. This was a fully loaded trap house operation, but sadly in Newport News, that is not that uncommon. Green ended up pleading guilty in June and got 3 years. Freeman pled guilty in July for trafficking H and having a firearm while doing it. He got 23 years and 4 months in federal prison. And that's basically his whole life behind bars. Almost 25 years for a world that wouldn't visit him, that wouldn't write him, that wouldn't claim him once he's gone. But maybe he's got family, maybe he's got a girl. But let's go to Bridgeport, Connecticut. You know, people think the streets make you famous. They think a gang gives you a family, protection, purpose. And what it really gives you is a countdown. Because this life, you know, you don't really grow old. You just get locked up or laid down. In today's case in Connecticut, it proves exactly that. And we're talking about Julian Scott, also known as Jusav, a 26-year-old of Waterbury, Connecticut. Shout out Waterbury, a member of the 960 gang, a crew that's been tied to shootings, drug trafficking, retaliation killings, and a level of chaos that swallowed a whole neighborhood. Scott was just sentenced to life in federal prison, plus another 30 years on top of that. So that means he will never walk free again, you guys. That's not a metaphor. That's not an exaggeration. That's just the reality of what's going on. Of the life of a bond to violent. Let's dig into how it got to this point. Back in 2021, the FBI and the ATF and the Waterbury PD, they all teamed up to investigate the violence that was ripping through their community. They cracked open a case that led to a 36-count federal indictment, charging 16 members of the 960 gang murder, attempted murder, assault, firearms, drug trafficking, the whole nine, obstruction, just about every charge you can imagine, you know, in the federal playbook. And Julian Scott, he wasn't some side player, he was the center of it. So, here's what the evidence was against him that they showed in court. On October 6, 2018, a drive-by on Bank Street and Porter Street, Scott and the other 960 members trying to kill rivals. Instead, they hit an innocent bystander. And, you know, that's the thing about street beefs. It never hits who you think it's going to hit. The streets don't do precision. They do casualties. On October 11th, 2018, this one was retaliation. One of their own got killed, so they went out hunting. Scott Pulliam and others pulled up and shot into a crowd. Not a rival, not really a target, but whoever happened to be standing there, they killed Francois Guzman, a 30-year-old man who wasn't involved in anything. He was just another victim. He was paralyzed for life. And that one moment destroyed 3 families. The victims, the victim who survived, and the shooters. And that's what people don't understand. Violence echoes long after the trigger gets pulled. And November 18, 2018, another drive-by in the same area. More rival gang members, 2 more people shot, and the feds tied Scott and the 960 gang to at least 10 violent acts between 2017 and 2018. 10 separate moments where somebody could have died or did. And on top of that, the guns, the shootings, the retaliation, the gang turned their crimes into rap videos, glorifying the shootings, talking about their ops, bragging about the beef, and, you know, flashing their weapons, talking about H and Fetty and Blow and dropping bars tied directly to the crimes they committed. Self-snitching at its finest. Here's the thing. When you're living that life and you think the music is protection, a way to show you're really about that life and about what you say, but in federal court, those lyrics become evidence. And they turn art into a confession. Scott's been locked up since 2019. In May 2024, a jury found him guilty on everything: racketeering, conspiracy, murder, under the violent crimes and aid of racketeering statute, using a gun to kill, attempted murder, assault with a dangerous weapon, just about everything they could pretty much stick him with. And he's never coming home, y'all. But that's a choice he's made. His co-defendant, Pulliam, got life plus 10 years, and three more guys, Zaquan McDaniel, Tajay Love, and Malik Bayon, also got life. All 16 members charged in the indictment have now been convicted, and they were sentenced. No one got away with anything. You think nobody talks, everybody walks, but I want to pause right here. Not for the feds, not for the press, but for the young men who think this lifestyle is a badge of honor. Because I've lived around this type of environment and these types of people, and I've seen exactly what happens, when you're looking for family, for brotherhood, when trauma, pain, ego, and addiction, when they all mix together and it turns boys into soldiers before their brains even finish developing. I wasn't in a gang or affiliated, but I know what it feels like to be pulled into darkness and manipulated and controlled and sent on straight dummy missions. People will use you until they can't. And I know what it feels like to be convinced that you're doing something meaningful for the gang, for your boys, when you're really just being used by people who don't care if you live or die. And I remember being around dudes who thought violence earned respect, earned notoriety, dudes who thought surviving chaos made them kings. But that's not just survival mode, that's power dressed up as purpose. And once you start walking that path, it's hard to go back. The world stops giving you options. I've been in a lot of hard situations like that, but just all the people out there, if your people's abandoned you, there's people out there that love you. And, not one of the people that pulled me into the dark spaces where I was in was fighting for my life. It's the same thing here. The gang, the image, the rap videos, none of that matters. No one's coming to visit Julian Scott in federal prison. None of that is going to give him his life back. None of that is going to give Francois Guzman his life back. None of that is healing the neighborhood they left behind. And that's why I make these episodes, because someone watching this, is probably playing with the same fire. Someone who thinks they're too smart to get caught, that they're the best that ever did it, and I thought the same thing. Someone who thinks their crew will protect them. Someone who thinks federal time is just a story for someone else. But the truth of the matter is, it's simple. You don't beat the streets. You survive them until you leave them, or they leave you in a cell or in a grave. So, that's the case for Mr. Jusad. Life plus 30 years, gone forever. Another young man swallowed by violence before he ever had a chance to heal from whatever started him down that road in the first place. So, let's go to November 2023, Dorchester. There's a Dominican dude named Anderson Ernesto Andujar, 28 years old. Everybody calls him Ernesto or Nesto. He's moving serious weight, tens of thousands of M30s, pills that look exactly like the real ones, but they're not. The dirty 30, plus bricks of powder, Fetty, Coke, Crystal. He's not small time, he's the hub for his little area. He's the right hand for a guy named Wanner Burndell Presnell. Werner's the guy who actually has got his hands in the bag. The undercover cards they pull up, think of him as the cashier. The pills themselves are coming from an older connect named Carlos Fabal. Carlos is 50-something. Already did a federal bid back in 2007 for blow. 67 months. He got out, laid low for a minute, then quietly became one of the biggest M30 pressers supplying Boston. Carlos cooks the mix, presses the blues with the perfect M stamp, and then drops the keys of pills to Nesto. Then there's Freddie Artemio Guerrero Soto, Nesto's runner, stasher. Freddie's the one holding the actual safe house down. where they keep the work and the money. In fall 2023 and in 2024, the DEA and the Massachusetts State Police Task Force were all over them. Undercover buys directly from Nesto and Wanner over 40 plus times. 40 grams of Fetty, 100 grams of powder. And there, one day, they even grabbed 40 grams of Fetty mixed with ice in it. Every deal gets filmed, weighed, field tested. In September 2024, they kick the doors in. They catch Nesto and Freddie altogether with 30,000 M30s and half a kilo of raw Fetty sitting there. That's enough to honestly kill all of Boston. But everyone starts folding pretty quick in their case. Freddie pleads first. He takes 30 months in May 2025. Wanner pleads in October 2025. Waiting on sentencing is Carlos Fabal. Actually, no, he pleaded September 2025. He's also waiting for sentencing. And Nesto is too. The conspiracy plus the distribution counts totaling way over 400 grams. So they're probably looking at life. Starting at a mandatory minimum, though, of 10 years, possibly life, because the conspiracy count alone carries 10 to life. Once you hit 400 grams of Fetty, the 3 separate 40-gram cells each, they carry another 5 to 40. Sentencing is set for April 6, 2026. The bottom lines: 4 dudes, one of the biggest Fetty rings in Boston, had seen in years, 30,000 fake perks, and half a kilo of powder off the streets one morning, and every single one of them is going to be inside for a while. The old head Carlos will probably never see the light of day. The judge is probably going to throw the book at him. So this is Fed by Fire. I'm going to go off script a little bit here where I talk directly to you. So drop your thoughts in the comments and, tell me what you've seen in your city. Tell me if you've lost somebody. Tell me part of your story. Or if you're interested in being a guest on Fed by Fire, we can do it, or me being a guest on yours. And today, at the end of my video, I just thought, I would end it with a few questions and a couple Bible verses. Well, one Bible verse, just something to give y'all. I'm gonna start doing it once a week. But yeah, just if you guys want to go in the comments and tell me some stuff we can talk about, that'd be cool too. But yeah, so we're gonna talk about the topic of maturity, and we're gonna read from Proverbs 9:9. Instruct the wise, and they will be the wiser still. Teach the righteous, and they will add to their learning. So, yeah. I'm gonna start giving y'all a verse at least once a week on my videos, but thank you guys for watching.